I think it's all turning around very nicely. But as far as the report that we see, according to everybody I've spoken to, I have not read it. There's absolutely no collusion, which is very important.
I would suggest, Trump, that you read the report eventually. That being said, he actually makes a point. There is no proof of collusion so far after everything that we've gotten out of the Mueller report and everything else. Trump is right so far. There is no report of the active collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. So there were two revelations that came out dealing with Michael Cohen and the Trump campaign on Friday. The first one came from special counsel Robert Mueller, and the second came from the Southern District in New York. Now, coming from special counsel, which is what Trump was talking about there, Mueller reported that a Russian citizen with ties to Moscow offered synergy between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. Here's the thing, though. Cohen never followed up on that. He was offered that, but nothing ever came of it. So it basically shows that the Russian government was trying to influence the campaign and trying to influence the election, but we already knew that. We already knew that was coming out. But it doesn't show any active collusion, so actually Trump was right. So because of that, many in the media and on the left have been focusing on the other thing that came out on Friday. The second revelation came from the Southern District of New York, and it could be more damaging. In their sentencing memorandum, they said Cohen was directed by Trump. They didn't name Trump specifically, but it was basically saying Trump's an individual one, who was Trump, was directed by Trump to make hush payments to women, including Stormy Daniels. Many are arguing, and the prosecutors up there are arguing, that these were illegal campaign contributions, mostly because they were not disclosed to the FEC and other reasons. So the left and many in the media focused on that. And some, like Adam Schiff, were even saying there'll be jail time from this. So the question came up then, is this so bad that Trump will be indicted? Now, some have said that you can't indict a sitting president, but some are arguing that, yeah, he'll be indicted. In fact, Dan Abrams was on ABC this week, and this is what he said about it. Go ahead and play that cut, Paul.
Basically says, we think this crime is really serious. We think it was done intentionally to subvert campaign finance laws. We think it was done intentionally to affect the election with coordination from and at the direction of Donald Trump. It is the first time that I've seen something in connection with this investigation where I've said to myself, you know what? I think they might actually seek to indict Donald Trump here.
So that's someone who's more on the left of things, so it's not too surprising he would come out with that. But there was also someone on the right for the National Review, Andrew McCarthy, who I respect a lot. I respect his opinions a lot. And he was on Fox News over the weekend, and he actually said something similar. This is what he said.
The Southern District of New York case, which is different from the Mueller case on Cohen, they are clearly going after the president on campaign finance violations. Yeah. And I think if you read the sentencing memo the Southern District filed in Cohen's case, it's clear that Trump is the target and he'll be indicted eventually. All we say is that he can't be put through the criminal process while he's president. So I think what can happen is they can indict him and he could be tried down the road when he's out of office.
Well, that's very interesting. He says that Trump will be indicted as well. This is someone on the right. This is a conservative, someone who's been defending Trump, basically saying he's going to be indicted. But he throws in a caveat there. He says he'll be indicted, but he'll be prosecuted down the road after he's president, that he can't go through a prosecution now, which is very interesting. Now, the Democrats want him to be indicted because they think that would be enough to throw impeachment. Now, there was someone who disagrees with all this, and this was Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. He was on Meet the Press over the weekend, and he actually made a very good point about all this. This is what he said.
You know, I think what's interesting about this is people forget history. The Federal Elections Commission actually ruled on this with John Edwards. They actually came up with a ruling and said that, you know what, the paying of his mistress was not a campaign finance violation. But I think it's bigger than this, and I think we have to decide in our society if...
And I'm going to get to that a little bit more when he gets into the big picture, but he basically said there that he doesn't think he'll be indicted, or if he is, we're not looking at history, because John Edwards was accused of the same thing, but they basically ruled, no, that is not a campaign finance violation. Let me tell you this. I understand that he might be indicted. I'm not sure they're going to get very far if he is, because legally there's a lot of murky ground here, because President Trump was doing stuff like this before he was running for president. He was protecting his brand. This is an argument that the Trump campaign and Trump and his lawyers can make. That, yeah, he directed it, but he's been directing this kind of stuff for years. So it's going to be very difficult to actually get a conviction out of it if he is indicted. Second, if he is indicted, there are a lot of legal opinions who say a sitting president cannot be indicted. So if he's indicted while being president, it'll be thrown to the courts for a while. It'll go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will basically rule it down and say a president cannot be indicted, so it's not going to go anywhere. All of this really is about politics, though. If this is going to be damaging to Trump, it would be politically, not legally, in my opinion. I think most of this could hurt him politically, and that's what the Democrats are trying to do. And now they are trying to possibly push impeachment. Or are they? We'll have that in Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. Merry Christmas, everyone. Welcome to the 50,000-watt front porch. This is Yaffee filling in for Bud. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Beyond Reason R. That is my Twitter handle. So we have the revelations coming from the Southern District of New York, basically implicating Trump in Cohen's hush payments to certain women. And they're basically arguing that they were illegal campaign contributions and that Trump is involved. This has led some to believe that Trump will eventually be indicted. Some, like Democrat Adam Schiff, say he might face jail time. But there's been a lot of people in the media saying that he should be impeached, or at least the Democrats should start impeachment proceedings over all of this. I think the reason a lot of the left in the media are doing this is because they're afraid the Democrats are not going to try this. And they're trying to push the Democrats to really go down this direction because they really want them to. But I'm a little skeptical that the Democrats will actually go for this. There's a couple of reasons why. But first, I want to play a cut here. This is from Meet the Press. This is independent Senator Angus King from Maine. Now, he caucuses with the Democrats, so he's basically a Democrat, even though he claims to be an independent. He was asked about, whether they should start impeaching Trump or trying to impeach Trump. His answer here is very interesting, and I think a lot of Democrats are feeling the way he is. This is what he said.
Impeachment, essentially, Chuck, is a political issue, and I don't think that well, let me put it this way. I don't think that there's evidence yet available to the public where there would be more or less a consensus that this was an appropriate path. My concern is that if impeachment is moved forward on the evidence that we have now, at least a third of the country would think it was just political revenge and a coup against the president. That wouldn't serve us well at all. The best way to solve a problem like this, to me, is election.
So I've noticed people like him and other Democrats that are in Congress are a little reluctant to go down the impeachment road. I think they want this investigation to continue, and they want all the speculation and talk to continue because they want to use it politically against Trump in 2020. But I think they want to run against Trump in 2020. I don't think they want to impeach Trump. Now, there is a way that they could impeach him, and then they know he won't be convicted in the Senate because Republicans own the Senate, so maybe they could get away with impeaching him. But I think they're a little reluctant to do that. I think they're afraid of the backlash that could possibly happen if they start to go down impeachment. I think there's other things that they want to do. But there are people in the media, some on the left in the media, who really think that the Democrats would be not doing their duty if they didn't go after impeachment. In fact, here's Professor Eddie Glaude, who was on Meet the Press. He was on the panel. And, well, here's a little dose of hyperbole for you this morning. Here is what he said.
It seems to me that part of what, and this goes to, I understand the politics, it goes to the moral question, the ethical question. Democracy is at stake. And it seems to me if Democrats don't take their responsibility seriously, they will be held responsible.
Democracy's at stake. If the Democrats don't do this, democracy could fail. I'm hearing a lot of people in the media sort of talking this way. I think it's hyperbolic. I don't think there's anything right now that suggests that because Trump's in there, democracy is at stake. But this is what they're pushing because they want to push the Democrats into impeachment, even though I think the Democrats are reluctant to do it.
Well, you know, there's an element of truth to what he said, though.
What's that?
It's that if they don't take up impeachment, the left side of the base is going to hold them responsible for it.
Well, yeah.
And they might truly suffer some adverse effects for that.
Well, and this is kind
you thought I
of
was
the
going to
hard
go with
thing.
the democracy at stake part.
No. See, yeah, I was talking about the hyperbole and the democracy at stake, all that. But you're right. There are some in the leftist base who really want them to go after impeachment. And he's right. They're going to hold them responsible. But if they go after impeachment, then there's going to be some on the right as well. Then there's going to be kind of a backlash, maybe like what happened with Brett Kavanaugh.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking was the Kavanaugh backlash.
I think the Democrats are reluctant to do this. I think they want to placate to the base that wants them to do it, so they're going to continue investigations and they're going to keep this going on for as long as they can. But to actually go forward with impeachment, I'm not so sure. All right, Melissa Fox is coming in at the bottom of the hour. She's going to update the latest news. She has Rubio commenting on the whole Russia probe and Christmas tree sales. So we'll find out what that's about at 6:30 here on Good Morning Orlando. So we have protests that started in Paris. They're all over France. And it has to do with basically the protest was sparked by a rise in fuel taxes, which really hurts the middle class and the lower classes there in France. Now, it started in France, but it's actually starting to spread to other countries like Belgium. And the protests continued over the weekend, mostly fueled by a group called the Yellow Vests. Now, they're a populist group, but they're really upset at the policies of Emmanuel Macron and the French government. They feel like what the French government is doing is actually hurting the middle class and the poor and not really affecting the rich. Most of this was sparked because, like I said just a second ago, he wants higher fuel taxes to combat global warming. Now, what you have to understand about what goes on in France is already one of the most taxed nations in the world, especially in Europe. Now, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, they released its annual revenue statistics report last week, and France topped the charts. They had a tax equal to 46.2% of their GDP in 2017, 46.2% of their GDP. That's more than Denmark, Sweden, and Germany, and far more than the U.S. France doesn't collect the revenue in the ways you might think, though. It doesn't just tax the rich. In fact, they rely disproportionately on social insurance, payroll, and property taxes. Social taxes account for 37% of France's revenue. The OECD average is 26%. Payroll and property taxes contribute 3% and 9%. So basically, their taxes are too high, and the people of France have just had enough. And a lot of polls show that Emmanuel Macron's approval rating is down and keeps going down. The people over there, when you have higher fuel taxes, are not going to be happy. Even if they believe that there might be something to do with climate change and something might need to be done, the fact is when you raise fuel, it's going to disproportionately hurt the lower classes. The upper classes and the ones who live in the urban areas are not going to really care that much. They're not going to feel it as much. But if you live in a rural community and you're relying on your vehicle to get to work, or you're relying on gas and oil to power your agricultural, equipment, it's going to affect you. And it's just getting too high. Their taxes were already high, and it's getting higher, and they've just had enough. And they feel like the government is not representing them. That's why it's called a populist movement. Now, populism, the definition of populism, basically just means support for concerns of ordinary people or the quality of appealing to or being aimed at ordinary people. Populism is spreading across Europe. It's in France right now, and it's violent in France, but there are a lot of different countries in Europe who have populist movements right now, and this is being done for two reasons. One, economic reasons, high taxes, over-regulation that makes it more difficult for the middle and lower classes to succeed, while the upper classes do just fine. The other reason, of course, is immigration. Countries like Germany let in over 1 million refugees, and you can't just let in that many people who are from a completely different culture than yours, completely different way of life, completely different way of looking at the law, and expect things to just be fine. It's not going to be fine. It's going to affect the country, and people feel like it's affecting it in negative ways, and they've had enough of it. Those are the biggest reasons why we have populism in Europe. Now, we do have somewhat of a populist movement here in the United States, but I think more of that has to do with culture. They feel like the elites and the upper class and those who live in the cities are destroying the culture. Attacks on Christianity, attacks on family values, and so forth. I think that's really what affects it here. There are economic reasons as well. But the reason why you should care about what's going on in France, especially because they want to raise the fuel taxes there to combat global warming, is that there are people in this country right now who want those same policies implemented here. There are people in this country, mostly on the left, that believe global warming is such a crisis that we have to start having carbon taxes and cap and trade and other fuel taxes right now to combat it. And that's a problem, because that will definitely affect the middle class here in the United States. And that's why you should care, because, yes, it's happening in Europe and they're having problems there, but we should learn from what's happening there and realize we don't want that here. But there are people on the left who want that here because they believe global warming is such a crisis that we have no other choice. But I think you're going to have a hard time selling that to the middle class of this country. Now, many on the right, including myself, are a little skeptical of the damages from man-made global warming, and skeptical that it's all being done by man, and skeptical that it's as bad as many people are saying it is. The reason why I am skeptical, and the reason why many on the right are skeptical, well, I'm going to tell you in a second. We have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. So we've been talking about the protests that are going on in France, and now it's spread to other countries in Europe. Let me just throw some stats at you. This is before they would have implemented more taxes on fuel there. The fuel tax rates in France are already estimated to be a whopping 64% on unleaded fuel and 59% on diesel fuel. That's before they would implement more taxes to combat global warming. By polling data as well, more than 70% of French voters support the Yellow Vests, this populist protest group, and Macron's approval rating has dropped to 23%. But 64% on fuel? Could you imagine if they just cut that in half, how much economic growth that would spur in that country, which needs economic growth, which needs to combat unemployment? But this, of course, has to do with what they call man-made global warming. Now, I've been skeptical of this for a long time, and I could go over a lot of the science, but there's a bigger picture that I'm looking at when it comes to this. And in fact, I want to play a voice of reason on here. Kim Strassel, she writes for the Wall Street Journal. She also has a book out. She's on Fox News a bunch. She's a political commentator that's been around for a while. On the Wall Street Journal podcast, on their latest podcast, she was asked about this, about why many on the right are skeptical of this man-made global warming movement and this alarmism that goes along with it. And she said something that I have been saying for a long time, and it's right on the money. Here it is.
You watch the media and many on the progressive left go all in on this. There's a disbelief that the actual interest here is in dealing with climate. This is the same crew of people that have long supported all measure of anti-growth environmental policies, shutting down all land for drilling. They don't like oil on principle. They don't like the idea of people's suburban sprawl, as they call it. And so the great thing for them about this climate agenda is it's their excuse to then shut down all of this ancillary thing as well, too. And I think a lot of folks out there understand that strategy, and it makes them skeptical of the bigger question of the science and what might be done down the road.
So much of this, in my opinion, is political. And the people that happen to be backing and spreading the alarmism over climate change are politicians who already wanted to regulate business, who already wanted to raise taxes, who already want us to go more towards socialism and not have a free market capitalist system like we have today. So it seems obvious to me that they use the climate change narrative because it's a great way, it's a great excuse, like Kim Strassel says, to do all those things. That is one big reason why I have always been skeptical, because it's the perfect theory for them to implement the policies that they have wanted to implement for years. Overregulating the economy, higher taxes, redistribution of wealth, more government control. It's perfect for them. So of course they're going to push it. I mean, there is no doubt that the climate has warmed in the past 100 years. There's some doubt as how much is caused by man, how much can we do about it. But I think it was a theory put forward by scientists that was grabbed by media and grabbed by the politician and used for political purposes to put forward an agenda more than it is to combat, the actual problem. There are different ways to combat the problem other than just raising taxes. But anytime you're against raising taxes or overregulation or whatever, you're called a climate change denier. And I thought she made an excellent point there. I've been saying that for a long time now. All right, Melissa Fox is coming in. She's going to talk about the latest news this morning, including the latest on the Mueller probe. Rubio has been commenting on that, and we have much more at 6:59 here on Good Morning Orlando.
I think it's all turning around very nicely. But as far as the report that we see, according to everybody I've spoken to, I have not read it. There's absolutely no collusion, which is very important.
So President Trump is right about one thing there. He said according to the report, there is no collusion, and that is true. The report that came out by Special Counsel Robert Mueller did, in fact, not show collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. So there were two big revelations surrounding Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, that were released on Friday. One, as I just said, came from Robert Mueller. What Robert Mueller found and put forward is that a Russian citizen with ties to Moscow offered synergy, or political synergy, between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. Here's the thing, though, and this is why Trump is right. Nothing ever happened with that. Cohen didn't follow up on it. Cohen was more interested in building Trump Tower in Russia, in Moscow, and getting that business deal done. He wasn't really interested in the political aspect of all of this. He just wanted the business deal done, and he was already talking to someone about the business deal, so he didn't really follow up on this whole political synergy thing. So once again, after all of this, there is still no proof of collusion. Now, the second revelation might be more damaging to Trump, depending on who you ask. If you ask someone on the left, they would say he should be put in jail today. But the second revelation came from the Southern District of New York. In their sentencing memorandum, they said Cohen was directed by Trump to make hush payments to women, including Stormy Daniels. They argue these were illegal campaign contributions that were also not disclosed to the FCC. So they're basically saying Michael Cohen should be put in jail for 4 years for illegal campaign contributions. And they're illegal because the way they were done, they were kept quiet and they weren't disclosed to the FEC. Now, this is the first report that actually implicates Trump in this because it says specifically that he was directed by individual one being Donald Trump. Now, I talked about in the first half hour how there are some on both the left and the right who think Trump could be indicted for this. I find that very hard to believe that that would happen. And if they do indict him, I don't think he'll actually ever face a jury or anything like that because it would go all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would say you can't indict a sitting president, and that would be the end of it. Now, maybe he could be indicted and face prosecution after he's president. I find that hard to believe as well because after he's president, none of these people will care anymore. He's out of office, and they'll move on to other things. This is all about politics. So where does all this lead? Well, I want to play a cut here from Alan Dershowitz, who was on Fox News over the weekend. And he made an interesting comment about these Cohen revelations, especially about the one dealing with Russia. And I think he's absolutely right. This is what Alan Dershowitz said. Go ahead and play cut one, Paul, for me.
So I don't see anything new in the Cohen revelations about paying off the women. The legal issue is whether a president is entitled to pay women in order to avoid embarrassment to his family, damage to his brand, perhaps impact the presidential election. Also, if he had to report these, the reporting period was after the election, so it wouldn't have any impact on the election anyway. So it's a very, very weak case that Cohen has provided. I suspect that may be the reason he's not getting much in terms of sentencing consideration.
And this is a very true statement by Mr. Dershowitz. The reason why this probably is not going to be as damaging as some are thinking is because you're on very murky legal ground with this. All Trump has to do to defend himself is say, look, I have been making these payments for years, even before I was president. You're going to have a hard time proving that this is actually a campaign contribution. It's really just to protect his brand. Now, some are making the argument it's a campaign contribution, but he can donate as much money as he wants. And Alan Dershowitz made a good legal point. That's why I think legally Trump is not in as much trouble as some are trying to say. Now, when it has to deal with what comes out of all of this, what will be the end result of the Mueller probe and everything so far? Alan Dershowitz makes a point there as well, and this is what he said.
The most likely is that we'll get a long report with a lot of circumstantial evidence growing out of the lies that people told, trying to put together a mosaic that shows political sin but not federal crime, that shows that the president may have done things that the American public would disapprove of, wanting to build a tower at the time he was running for president. Maybe the campaign used material from WikiLeaks, but none of that is criminal. So that's the most likely scenario. No crime, but political sin, which would be a complete distortion of what the role of a special counsel is supposed to be.
So this is why I think the Democrats are a little reluctant to start pushing impeachment right now. I talked about that in the first hour of the show. Because if this comes out and nothing criminal comes out of this, you're going to have a hard time pushing impeachment, and it could backfire on the Democrats, just like the Kavanaugh thing backfired on the Democrats. I think what the Democrats want to do is they want this investigation to continue and to have these little things leaked out that make Trump look bad politically and that the American people might not like, but that are not criminal, because they want to use this to defeat Republicans and to defeat Trump in 2020. Do you agree or disagree? 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. Now, I want to step back and look at the big picture of all this, especially when it comes to campaign contributions and all the laws dealing with that and dealing with special counsels. We'll talk about that. We have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. So we've been talking a lot this morning about the revelations surrounding Michael Cohen that were released on Friday. In the first half hour, I talked about whether the Democrats are going to push impeachment, whether Trump will be indicted. But I want to step back for a second here. Because what are we talking about to begin with? We're talking about what they say are illegal campaign contributions. You know, some people tell me I should run for office. I think they're all crazy. But one of the things that makes me scared to ever run for office is all of these different campaign laws that you can get caught up in without realizing you're breaking the law. I mean, President Trump has been making these hush payments and non-disclosure agreements for years, even before he was running for office. There's a good possibility he didn't realize there were campaign contributions. Now, if they prove that he did, that would be problematic for Trump. But there's all these different laws surrounding trying to run for office. It's kind of the problem with government in general. We're drowning more and more in laws. It's even worse in Europe, and you're seeing the effects of it in Europe. And the only person I saw really bring this up was Rand Paul. Rand Paul was on Meet the Press over the weekend, and he talked about this very thing. And he says, as a country, we have to start asking ourselves if this is the right thing to do. Here he is. Cut 2 for me, Paul.
I think we have to decide in our society if there are thousands and thousands of rules. It's incredibly complicated, campaign finance. We have to decide whether or not really criminal penalties are the way we should approach criminal finance. I personally think that if someone makes an error in filing paperwork or in not categorizing a campaign contribution correctly, it shouldn't be jail time. It ought to be a fine. And so it's just like a lot of other things that we've done in Washington. We've over-criminalized campaign finance.
So think about that for a second. He's saying really it should just be a fine. And a lot of times it is just a fine. When Obama violated campaign finance laws, he got fined. It was a little different, but it was basically a fine. You have the Democrats and some on the left talking about impeachment over campaign finance law that really should just be a fine. I think Rand Paul makes an excellent point in looking at the big picture of all of this, especially in dealing with government. Now, another thing he talked about in terms of the big picture is the power of these special prosecutors and these special counsels. There's a big problem with their power and what they can do and why he's against even implementing or having these special counsels in the first place. I think he makes a good point as well. Someone who believes in small government like myself really finds this very interesting. Now, this is what Rand Paul said. Go ahead and play cut 3 for me, Paul.
This has been my overall complaint about about having these special prosecutors, is that really they find a person and they look for a crime. Traditional justice in our country is someone steals something from the grocery store and you have a crime, you try to find out who did it. With a special prosecutor, you decide we're going after someone, the president, and we're going to squeeze as many people as we can until we can try to get a person. And that's why I'm against these special prosecutors. I think they're a huge mistake, and I think they're a huge abuse of government power.
Well, so there's, if you believe that, then what's the repercussion? Well, you just have the Justice Department take care of it as usual, or you have Congress investigate. But if Congress investigates, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to go after a person over going after a crime. Now, the Democrats will argue, well, we weren't going after the person. Trump just happened to be the person that we found in all this. When you look at what's going on and you look at what Mueller's trying to do, and he's trying to squeeze people around Trump to get information on Trump, it does seem like Rand Paul makes a really good point, that they're really just trying to go after a person. But as Alan Dershowitz said, as I played in the first segment of this hour, I don't think they're going to find any crime. I think at worst they'll find things that are politically damaging, but criminal, I don't know. Maybe we do give these special counsels a little bit too much power, but I think it's time for the Mueller probe to wrap up at least. I think it's time for it to end. I think we've gone on for long enough, and I think it's time to get this thing wrapped up. All right, Melissa Fox is coming in. She'll have some top stories for us at the bottom of the hour at 7:30 here on Good Morning Orlando. Oh, I am so looking forward to doing this sound judgment question because, of course, I had to do it. Bud's not here, the Patriots fan, so I get to do it. And before we get to that question, we have Stephanie who is going to tell you what you can win.
That's right, Yappy. So today we have a great pair of tickets to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra Winter Tour playing on December 15th at the Amway Center.
All right, Trans-Siberian Orchestra tickets, one of our more popular prizes. So for today's sound judgment, I want you to listen to this audio from the final play of the game between the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. A miracle play with a couple of laterals that ended up having the Dolphins win at the last second. So the question for you today, listen to this sound and then tell me, how many points did Miami win by? How many points did the Miami Dolphins beat the New England Patriots by? Here's the audio.
7 seconds left. Tannehill will throw it, and this will end it after the shovel, or will it? Miami running around, circling. Oh, look out! Gronkowski didn't have the angle. Touchdown! Oh, Kenyon Drake! A miracle!
Yeah, it was a miracle. And by the way, this is not why Bud is not here today. This was already a planned day off.
Sure, it's not.
He's not like, I can't go to work because my Patriots lost. Humiliating defeat at the end of the game. All right, sound judgment question, though. By how many points did the Dolphins win by? Let's start with line 3. Let's go to line 3. Line 3?
Hi, Yappy. Every time I call in, you guys ask a sports question. I'm going to guess and say 3.
3, no, that is incorrect, but not a bad guess. Less than 3. Let's go to line 1.
1.
Yep, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 point. The final score was 34-33. The Dolphins winning at the last second. So you get to go to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. You excited?
I am excited, and that was an absolute guess on my part too, Yappy. So, me.
Okay, well that counts. I understand that. So you didn't get to watch the game, huh?
No, unfortunately.
No. All right. So what's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm Jennifer from Fern Park.
Jennifer from Fern Park. Have you ever been to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra?
I have not. I'm very excited.
All right. I hear it's a great show. I really need to go as well. One of these years, I'm definitely going to go. But everyone tells me it's just an amazing show. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Put you on hold. So, Paul, I know that you were not really focused on that game because you were focused on another game.
Yes, that's correct. Although I go to a specific place that has probably about 100 Ravens fans watching the Ravens game every week, right? And we saw that play live as it was happening.
Oh, really?
While our game was in overtime. And so we're all screaming at the screen because we all can't stand the Patriots, of course. But then we have to remember, like, wait, hold on. Our game's in overtime. Pay attention over here. This one's more important.
Yeah, but that was an amazing play. But you were very upset. The first thing you said to me this morning is, my team can't win a game.
Yeah, we should have won our game.
Well, it makes you feel any better. The Bucs lost to you. So.
Well, of course they did.
No, not of course. They've been doing better the past couple of weeks.
They're going to lose next Sunday, too.
Are they playing the Ravens?
Yes, they are.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll see. That'll be interesting. All right. So I appreciate everyone trying to get that. We'll be giving Trans-Siberian Orchestra tickets away all week. So call in tomorrow if you didn't get a chance today. We have the Rush Morning Update coming and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone. Welcome back to Good Morning Orlando. We're on News Radio 93.1 WFLA. It's 93.1 FM. Get us on AM 540. Also get us on your iHeartRadio app, or you can listen how I listen through HD Radio. If you have an HD Radio, it's 107.7 HD3. So in the next hour, we're going to have Open Mind Monday, so you can call on any topic. Call 407-916-5400. You can also text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply on anything you want to talk about. We've been talking a lot about the Mueller probe, but I want to bring up one other thing right now. We have the big story over the weekend. Well, it really isn't a big story, but they made it a big story with Kyler Murray, who won the Heisman Trophy. Somehow some media outlets, what they decided to do was go over his old Twitter. I don't know how they had the time to do this, but this is what they did. And they found what they call some homophobic tweets from when he was 14 years old. Now, thank God I didn't have Twitter at 14. I mean, just imagine all of the things that you might have said when you were 14, when you were in middle school, when you were in high school. And then your career may be destroyed over something like that. Now, this had a lot of backlash, a lot of people defending him, thinking it's just outrageous to totally bash this guy for something he tweeted when he was in middle school. But, Paul, I have to ask you, because I don't know the answer to this question. Why is it we do this now? Why do we do the social media mobbing now? I don't understand.
Well, it's because everybody has to be held accountable for everything they've ever done in their entire life in the history of all mankind.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, you're not allowed to grow and develop and be a different person.
You're supposed to already know everything by the time you're 14.
You're the person you were 20 years ago. You're not anybody new.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do they actually believe that? I don't understand.
Well, I mean,
I think
the honest answer is that, you know, we're in a season of offense. That's the generation we're in.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, we're in a generation of offense, and so we're
offense.
Yeah, we're looking for something that we can be angry about that you did.
Yeah, because we're in a season of offense, so we all want to be angry, we all want to be offended, and we all want to be a victim.
Exactly.
Wow. So what do you think about that out there? We can call in the next hour, 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. Season of offense. We all just want to be angry about something. I mean, it really is ridiculous. The good point of it, though, or some good news that came out of it, is the people doing this kind of face sort of a backlash. The people are kind of getting sick of this because, I mean, the kid was 14. You know what middle schoolers said when I was in middle school, when I was 14? You don't want to know what I heard.
Dude, listen, I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and if she comes home and tells me some of the things that she's heard, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, really?
Yeah.
And it's only gotten worse.
Advice I have to all you 14-year-olds out there, just don't go on Twitter.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Don't do it. You listen to Yaffee.
14-year-olds, don't pick up your phone.
Yeah, I know. It's a lost cause. All right. Melissa Fox is...
Aren't most 14-year-olds on Snapchat and Instagram anyway?
Oh, that's true. Snapchat, well, I don't know. Is Snapchat like already old news with 14-year-olds? I know it was popular like last year.
Snapchat is their Facebook.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Facebook's for old people.
Yes.
So, but it's still popular. It hasn't changed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it hasn't gone anywhere.
Oh, no, it's
there
hot.
are
It's
people, this is a true story. So Snapchat has infiltrated the younger generation in a way that I know teenagers who are on Snapchat all the time that didn't know iHeartRadio had anything to do with radio. They just thought it was a Snapchat channel.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, however they get to it, I guess. All right, Melissa Fox is going to talk about the latest news. She's going to talk about, let's see, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about Rubio talking about the Russia probe and the Florida November jobs report. Yep, all right, it's 8 o'clock here on Good Morning Orlando. Yes, and we're taking calls on any topic for the 8 o'clock hour here on Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 93.1 FM or AM 540. Let's go to Ron in Claremont. Ron, what do you got for us this morning?
Good morning, Yaffee. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm calling in reference to the young man who won the Heisman Trophy, and he made these tweets when he was 14.
Yes.
And you would happen to mention if it would have any impact on his career.
Right.
Okay. He could have made those statements 14 days ago, and it wouldn't have had an impact on his career.
Okay, why is that?
This kid can throw the football, and he was already drafted by the Oakland A's. They say he's a better baseball player. Doesn't matter what he said. All he's got to do is come out like the liberals and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he did apologize. Interesting.
You know, I mean, you know, if you could throw a football and you can catch a baseball, nothing's going to interfere with your nothing you say is going to interfere with your career.
Okay. All right. Pretty strong statement. I wonder if there is a line there, actually. There would have to be something. I mean, you have the Kansas City Chiefs guy who he didn't say something, but he hit a woman, and that, you know, he was fired over that. So I guess there is something there.
There are certain lines that you can't cross that will have immediate repercussions on your career. The question is, do they have long-term repercussions? I mean, we saw what happened with Ray Rice. He hasn't been in the NFL since. You know, so we've seen where certain things will do that. I believe it will be more action-based versus
words,
word-based.
especially when you're 14.
Yeah, when you're saying something and we know you've said it a long time ago. And plus, when somebody says something, you can always come back and say, I apologize for saying that. It wasn't in my mind. I'm not in that mindset anymore. That's not who I am. Unless you say something outrageously and intentionally hateful, like I want to murder all puppies that are brown or something like that, then.
Who would say that? That's awful. All right. So, interesting point there. Let's go to Brad in Winter Park. Brad, what do you got for us this morning?
Oh, good morning, Yaffee. Yes, I usually come on with different examples of fake news on networks like such as CNN, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, and it just occurred to me that James Comey had this closed testimony, as we know, and it was reported on Fox News and several other, and I have no reason to believe they're lying, that some 200 times he said, I don't recall, I don't remember, or I don't know. Now, it seems to me that when a former head of the FBI is shifty like that, he's either incompetent or he's purposely trying to, not answer the questions. So my point is, this morning, I've been looking on all the other stations, MSNBC, CNN, not a word. They're not reporting that because is that evidence to you of propaganda of the left, that they are propaganda arms? Because why wouldn't they report that? That's a major story. The former head of the FBI obviously covering up by saying, I don't know, I don't recall. Because if a Republican or Trump says things like that, boom, they're right on it. Can anyone say that Anderson Cooper, CNN, is not fake news because they won't even report that Comey just did that almost 200 times?
Well, I mean, they're definitely biased. There's no doubt about that. Fake news would be actively, putting out something that's fake. This is them just not reporting on it. There is a little bit of a distinction there, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, they're definitely biased. They're not going to report on something like that if it helps Trump.
Yeah, we got to be careful with the fake news moniker because, like you said, fake news is I am deliberately spreading a lie in order to influence the public. Or saying something that's false, and I know it's false, and I'm saying it anyway. It's not just, I like this guy better than I like the other guy.
And I'm sure fake news happens periodically, but, I mean, most of what is happening is media bias. And there's definitely bias, but that's not really an example of fake news. So, all right, we'll take more calls. If you ever want to comment on that and comment on his take, I'm sure a lot of you agree with him. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply, and we'll take more calls next. It's 8:18 here on Good Morning Orlando. Yes, and this is Yaffee filling in for Bud. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can. The Twitter handle is @ToBeyondReasonR, or just search for Michael Yaffee. That's Yaffee. F is in Frank. F is in Frank. E. It's not Yappy. Yaffee is my actual last name. You can find me on Twitter. I call it Beyond Reason R, by the way, because I do my own show, Beyond Reason Radio, which you can find anywhere podcasts are available, including your iHeartRadio app. Just search for Beyond Reason Radio there. So I got a bunch of text messages coming in for Ask or Tell Yaffee Anything, and you can text as well. Text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. One person, we talked about the flu shot earlier in the show. One person said, never had a flu shot and never will have a flu shot. Now, Paul, you admitted that you've never had a flu shot, have you? Have you ever gotten one?
Nope, never in my life.
I never have either, but I keep hearing that we should. So, do you not like needles?
Well, it's not a matter of not liking needles. They're not my favorite, of course, but I
love needles.
It's not anything I've ever done. I've never gotten the flu,
yeah,
so I've never seen any reason to try to get a flu shot.
I don't know. All the doctors that are listening right now are screaming at us behind, you should get your flu shot. Steph, have you ever gotten your flu shot? Stephanie, have you ever gotten a flu shot?
I get it every year.
You get it every year, so you're the good one out of us for this.
Yes,
this
and my
topic.
sister just got the flu, and she didn't get the flu shot, and she was sick.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, man. So you definitely needed to get it because then you could catch it from her. If you...
Get it every year.
Oh, man. All right, and you never caught the flu. So there we go. All right, so Steph says get the flu shot. So if we get sick, Paul, Steph's going to be
It's
laughing.
going to be all her fault because she spread her sister's germs over here to us. That's what it's going to be.
I like how you spun that. That was good. All right. Another person. Let's see. What else is on the text line? We were talking about Twitter and how I told, young people probably just not to use Twitter because the Heisman Trophy winner was finding some controversy because something he tweeted when he was 14 years old. One person says Twitter is like the F word. If you have anything intelligent to say, you don't use it. So if you want something intelligent to say, don't use Twitter. That's pretty interesting. All right, but you can call as well on any topic, 407-916-5400. Let's go to Raul in Orlando. Raul, what do you got for us this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Yappy. I just want to congratulate you that I hear that you say 407 instead of 407, because I had called like 2 weeks ago. I didn't get to go on the air, but I had mentioned that you at the time and Budman especially says 407, and then at the end they'll say 23680. So why the difference? But I'm glad that you say 407.
Lots of people do that. Really? That really bothers you?
Yeah. Even your advertisers, they'll say 407. They'll say 407, and then in the phone number at the end they'll say 0030. But then at the beginning it's always 407. But always a letter. 0 is the number. You're correct in saying 407 now.
Thanks, Raul. Technically, yes. I don't think that is the most unique call I think we have ever had.
Get it right, Yaffee.
For Open Mind Monday.
0 is the number. O is the letter.
Is upset because I say 407 sometimes.
40. I bet you'll fix it from now on. I bet you it'll be in your head.
I guess.
From now on, you'll be like 407.
This is the issue of the day, apparently, that we can't say, you have to say 0.
See? Season
it was so important that he had to call.
And there is no triple. There is no number triple. You say 888, there's no number triple.
Okay. All right. These are the big issues of the day, apparently. If you want to call anyone, you can call 407.
Yeah.
916-54.
No, that's 5400.
Oh, yeah. Can I say 5400 or
there is
no
100?
You can say 5400.
There is no 100 on the dial. No.
Where's the 5400 number? I have to say 5400.
There's a teenager looking for that button on their phone now, the 5400 button.
I've always wanted to call and I can't find the 5400. All right, you heard her voice. That's Melissa Fox. She is coming in to talk about the latest news. It is 8:28 here on Good Morning Orlando. Yes, and this is Yaffee filling in for Bud. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at BeyondReasonR and listen to my podcast on iHeartRadio. You can also catch the podcast of this show on iHeartRadio. Just search for Bud Hedinger and you will find it. I post it every day. Let's take a call here as we're taking calls on any topic. Let's go to John in Orlando. John, what do you got for us this morning?
Good morning, Yaffee.
Good morning.
Unfortunately, Robert De Niro is half right.
Is half right, you said?
He's the best thing to happen to us in almost 60 years, and we're the worst thing that's happened to him.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Okay, if we would have said we don't believe that Mr. Obama was from the United States, and we wanted to try to prosecute him for not being from the United States and becoming the president for fraud, we knew in the beginning it wasn't true. The whole thing, that was just attack. And if we started investigating, set up a 2-year running investigation where it's open season on everyone connected to him, and then just started handing out indictments for everybody who had anything in their past, there's no one in the U.S. government that is going to survive that attack. So we're going to get something on everybody. You look at how iffy everyone agrees your taxes are. That you could have a professional come in and prepare them. Somebody else can come in and just interpret it different, tear it all apart, dig in, find something wrong. Look at Flynn. Nothing like that should have ever happened to him. How are we going to keep getting candidates who are qualified and are good for the United States and want to look out for the United States if they're afraid of what's going to happen to him under attack.
Well, you actually make a couple good points. One point is you're right. Trump would probably, most likely, not be under any type of investigation if he were not president right now. No, nobody would be focusing on him or his people if he were not president. So that means Robert De Niro has a point that the worst thing to happen to him would be president. I don't think that was Robert De Niro's point. He was kind of saying it's bad for the country, but you're right that he's kind of right in a way. But you also make a good point, and I thank you for your call, John, about so many laws that you could always find something on some of these people, especially if they're pretty rich. Rand Paul actually made somewhat of a similar point this morning. And go ahead and get cut 2 ready for me of Rand Paul. I played this earlier in the show. It was talking about campaign finance laws. And he was basically saying, look, we're going to criminalize breaking campaign finance laws when really it should just be a fine. This is what he said.
I think we have to decide in our society if there are thousands and thousands of rules. It's incredibly complicated, campaign finance. We have to decide whether or not really criminal penalties are the way we should approach criminal finance. I personally think that if someone makes an error in filing paperwork or in not categorizing a campaign contribution correctly, it shouldn't be jail time. It ought to be a fine. And so it's just like a lot of other things that we've done in Washington. We've over-criminalized campaign finance.
Okay, so that kind of goes in line with what John was saying there. Good call from John. We got texts coming in. Earlier we had a caller who called in and was complaining about CNN and other outlets other than Fox because they were not reporting something in Comey's testimony where Comey over 200 times said he didn't remember or didn't recall. It seems like he's trying to hide someone. Well, that caller called in and said, isn't this proof of fake news? That CNN is fake news because they did not report of that. And I had made the point that I understand what the guy's saying, and CNN is definitely biased, but it's not technically fake news because it's not that they're putting forth false information there, it's that they're not reporting on it because they're biased. Well, I got a texter that texted in, and Paul, I'd like your take on this as well because you were commenting on that. A texter texted in and said, is not a lie of omission still a lie? So that brings up an interesting topic. When CNN doesn't report on something because they're biased and they're focused on other things, is that considered the same thing as a lie because it's quote unquote a lie of omission?
Yeah, he threw the words lie of in front of the word omission, but that doesn't make it a lie. I mean, you can omit something. Doesn't mean you're not telling the truth in what you're speaking of.
Okay.
So that doesn't necessarily make it a lie, so that doesn't make it fake. Fake is false, untrue, wrong, incorrect. So just because you leave something out or you don't say it doesn't make it false or incorrect or untrue what you're saying. I mean, all of the networks do it. Fox News does it all the time. When something bad reflects on Trump, they ignore it all day, and they're talking about puppy dogs and turtles and all kinds of stuff.
Well, when you go online right now, if you read the Huffington Post or you read the Daily Wire, the Huffington Post is going to cover certain things that the Daily Wire didn't cover. The Daily Wire is going to cover certain things that the Huffington Post didn't wire.
Yeah.
I don't think they're lying.
No.
They're definitely biased, but they're at least admitting their bias, which I'm okay with. But there's definitely a bias there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something that's really controversial that a lot of people are going to disagree with. I have said on the show before that I don't like it when Trump says, well, he said it later, the fake news is the enemy of the people. Now, Bud likes it when Trump agrees with Trump says that. Mark Logus agrees with Trump says that. The reason why I don't like it is, yes, when there is fake news, it is bad. I agree with Trump. But what Trump does is he puts in whole news organizations and calls them fake news. So CNN, he says, is fake news. That means everything CNN does is fake news. Or the New York Times, fake news. That means everything the New York Times does is fake news. I think that is going too far. Yes, there is fake news that happens, but I think calling whole news organizations like that just fake news, I think is going too far, because really what Trump is upset about is that those news outlets disagree with him and his policies.
Right.
And I don't want to call someone who disagrees with me my enemy, the enemy of the people. They might disagree with me, and I might have a different view of what the world should be. But if we get to a point where we call people that we just merely disagree with the enemy of the people, I think that's a problem. And that's where I'm coming from. That I agree with a lot of Trump that they're biased and they're out to get him, but I I just don't like going that far, saying the enemy of they're the enemy of the people.
Well, I mean, you could say that him calling the entire organization of CNN fake news is actually fake news.
Well, yeah, that's true, but a lot of people say that.
But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the season of offense. Just because I disagree with you, you know what I'm saying? I had a friend of mine post on Facebook the other day. They asked, can somebody please tell me the difference between a homophobic statement and a personal opinion?
Yeah,
you know?
That's true.
Because just because I have a personal opinion, I disagree with you on what you believe does not mean I hate you, I'm angry at you, I'm trying to destroy you, take down your way of living. It just means I disagree with you.
Right. So we got callers coming in right now, 407-916-5400. I think one of the biggest problems in this country right now is we're looking at each other as our enemies when we're really not. We should be able to disagree peacefully. 407-916-5400 at 8:50 here on Good Morning Orlando. All right, we just have a couple of minutes left here, but let's take another call for Ask or Tell Yaffee Anything. You can call on any topic of your choice. Let's go to Pete in Maitland. Pete, what's your take this morning?
Hey, I was just calling about CNN and fake news. You know, the president just really wants a fair shake. If you report, negative news about him, he wants the positive stuff shown about the same amount of time as the negative stuff. They just kind of, slant one way, and they don't really report good news, and that's kind of irritating. I killed my cable because of it, Can't pay for CNN because it's just, bad news organization.
Okay, but what do you think about calling them the enemy of the people?
Well, I'm from Bahamas, so it's very difficult to hear, the news media bashing the president like that. It's irritating to me. So them being the enemy of the people, I honestly think that it's like that. Some other news organizations, maybe not.
Okay, all right. I appreciate your call, Pete. I mean, I understand. I don't like CNN either. I don't really like watching a lot of it because it is definitely biased, and sometimes I just think they go way overboard. But I mean, when Obama was president, you listen to any talk radio stations, they were bashing Obama.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It was just as bad when Obama was president. A lot of people try to say, oh, no, Trump gets it worse than any president ever has. Well, you listened to them when Clinton was going through his scandal with Lewinsky,
Well, but it depends what news outlets you're talking about.
Right.
It wasn't as bad for Obama on CNN, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post. So there is an argument to be saying that these sort of mainstream outlets are more biased against Trump than Obama. But I just don't want to call someone my enemy just because they disagree with me politically. Because when you're calling someone your enemy, what does that mean? Where does that lead to next? War? I mean, that's what you do in a war. You call someone your enemy. Does that mean we should fight a war against them because they are our enemy? That's what worries me about that. So, so that was my take on that. That's why I just feel like it goes a little too far. All right. Bud will be back tomorrow. I appreciate you all listening to the show today, and I'll end the show just like Bud does. God bless you, and God bless America. Try to stay warm, and I'll catch you guys next time.